South Africa's narrow tax base has come into sharp focus as the government prepares to deliver the delayed 2025 budget speech. The tabling of the budget was postponed last month over contention raised against a proposed 2% increase in value-added tax. Analysts say the country's narrowing tax base leads to difficult discussions and decisions such as a VAT hike. Research and Impact Manager at 22 Sloane, Boitshoko Shoke, speaks to us about this. Thank you so much for your time, Boitshoko. Of course, the biggest talking point on the 2025 budget has been that proposed VAT hike to 17%, and now that it has been shot down, there's talk of a lower increase. That would still have an impact on ordinary consumers as well as the SME sector. Talk us through the views around those two elements.
So essentially, with regards to South Africa, we have a very narrow tax base, meaning that a small percentage of the population is responsible for paying the majority of tax. This is not a sustainable method for the government to collect revenue. So there needs to be some form of expansion. SMEs are a viable solution for that, especially since jobs are created through SMEs, meaning that there will be then income tax from SMEs and then company tax from the SMEs themselves. So income tax from the employees and then company tax from the SMEs themselves. So essentially, that's the solution we're proposing in our article, is that there are solutions to basically getting other streams of revenue, and SMEs are untapped potential, which the government can look into.
And speaking of that as an avenue, particularly the latter, the tapping in by government into the SME sector for that expansion in collecting tax revenue, are there estimations at this stage, given the number of participants in the small medium enterprise network in South Africa, that would yield the result that government is looking for?
So essentially, with regards to the size and scope of the informal sector, so I'm just going to move on to the informal sector. It's not, there isn't really a solid number because the sector itself is very precarious. Not a lot of SMEs are registered, informal SMEs. But the World Bank estimated that with regards to basically trying to formalize these informal enterprises, this could increase our GDP by 10%, and that's a substantial amount of revenue that the government can get there.
And that's a very important point that you pick up on, the unregistered side of the small, medium enterprise industry in South Africa. It really is a picture that seems like government is shooting itself in the foot, but also the sector growing and further the creation of jobs at a local space. Would you say there's a lack of political will on that front, or it's just a matter of policy just not being on the table currently?
I think there is political will, right? Because South Africa does have a dedicated ministry to SMEs, so which means that there is political will to basically try and formalize informal enterprises. However, the issue is that then there's the regulatory aspect that is a bit complicated for SMEs or informal SMEs to navigate. You have a lot of regulatory, a lot of red tape, and then compliance becomes an issue. So I think that's where the issue is. It's perhaps maybe a policy rather than will. And also then a lack of collaboration between stakeholders. So there needs to be collaboration between the private sector, the public sector, as well as government, because there needs to be a lot of, perhaps I would say leniency, but not really leniency, but make it easier for SMEs to comply so that they could get funding, so that they then could pay tax, so just make it easier for compliance so that at least we could then collect revenue. It's not an easy thing to do, but it is possible.
As a parting shot, would you think that role players within the SME would come to the party on the side of compliance? I mean, one point in reference was during the COVID-19 times where businesses were asked to register for the sole benefit of getting relief, but we saw that many were not forthcoming solely based on their books not being in order.
I think a lot were forthcoming because, I also focus on this within my PhD research, where I look at basically informal businesses that want to comply. So they are forthcoming. I think maybe perhaps there is a breakdown in communication. It's not really clear which processes informal businesses need to follow to get their businesses formalized. So that's the thing, is that there aren't really clear mechanisms or processes or steps for these businesses to try and formalize, but they are really willing to do it. It's just a case of these processes not being clear or, simple to the ordinary man that just wants to have a business.
Thank you so much for your input. Boitshoko Shoke is with the 22 on Sloane as we go through expectations on the eve of the delayed 2025 budget.